Welcome to the Operator Signal. Today, I am joined by founder and CEO Chris Condon. He is the CEO of Aircon. Chris, thank you for joining us today. Tell us a little bit about yourself and tell us about the company.
Thanks, James. Great to be here. So Aircon is a tech platform that helps freight forwarders know what they're committing to at the time of quote by evaluating the routes, capacity, accounts, those type of things. So the logic is that we're allowing them to know what they're committing to, so they don't risk all their cash downstream.
Perfect. Yeah, I'm sure they appreciate that as well. So let's get right into it. So in your space, are you seeing in the market? Are you seeing growth or tightening?
Well, I see a little bit of both. So we're in the air cargo, international air cargo. So what we're seeing is the certain trade lanes tightening, certain airlines tightening. We also see certain airlines opening up. But what I really see is the change in the behavior of how the airlines are actually treating freight forwarders, right? They're moving away from static rates. They're moving away from kind of published rates and they're moving to more dynamic pricing. Right. So kind of think of like the Uber effect of surge pricing of, hey, when capacity is tight, we're going to charge more. When it's low, we'll charge less to try to attract those people, which is really good for the airlines. I think it's a smart move for the airlines. I think it's a challenge for the freight forwarders to know what they're committing to at the time of quote, because many times they're quoting, 7 to 30 days in advance. So again, taking that risk and whatnot. So I don't see it as being a problem in terms of capacity or in terms of overall volume. It's more of a how the behavioral change that's happening because of tech in the space.
Okay, and so that kind of fits neatly into my next question, and maybe you touched on this already, but where are you finding pressure in the business currently? Is it technology or supply chain or something else?
Yeah, so that's an interesting question how to say that, because really I believe the issue is understanding what the value is of a solution or tech versus what the cost is of the tech. We from our industry standpoint, we spend a lot of time automating. We've spent a lot of time digitization of the process, and so and then there's a lot of hype around AI, right? So everybody talks about what AI is, and so the main thing to us is that the understanding what the value of the tool by utilizing AI versus a chatbot versus a LLM standpoint. It's really understanding what the limitations are and what the value created by using AI as part of the solution.
Okay. Okay. And so are you trying to find ways to better utilize technology perhaps then or
Well, yeah, I'm not sure I'd say better utilized, but better structured and solve the problem, right? So we look at it from, hey, what is the problem from a freight forwarder's perspective to be able to compete at scale, particularly for the small to medium sized freight forwarder? And work backwards, right? So where do they live, right? How do things be communicated? Well, it's obviously email, at least for the foreseeable future. So we actually can read emails very specific to logistics, very specific for different modes. We structure it. We then put it into a different AI tool, not an agent, but more of an ML structure. Then based on the needs of the forwarder, we respond via email back to them. And we do this stereotypically, we can do it as fast as 2 minutes, 24/7, 365, which is a tremendous value in it by itself, because speed to market in air is the first and foremost overpriced. There's reasons for that. It has to do with the size of the shipment, et cetera, et cetera. But speed to market is most important. But speed to market also means you got to make sure you have all your accessorials, all your whatnot on the actual quote. And we've kind of cracked that nut, if you will, in terms of our secret sauce on how to put logic behind what the market's telling us.
okay. Okay. I have one other quick follow up. You mentioned how in your first response around there's dynamic pricing that's kind of been introduced. How does that impact you? I'm curious.
Well, we had to find a way to do it, right? So we had to figure out a way, as humans, how do they interpret dynamic pricing, right? So how do they pick particular flight? How do they pick a particular airline? And again, because we're not AI first, we're freight forwarders first. Like my background is freight forwarder, right? Like I've been in logistics my entire career. I know very little about tech. which is kind of a call out to a lot of these, freight forwarders. Like when they start automating tasks, they're going to be able to do that by themselves, right? Like you can call a website and get a status update, right, for visibility, relatively quick, in probably less than 30 minutes. You're going to have that code written, which goes back to my conversation about behavior, right? The behavior of needs to change, because if we just automate to automate, it's just going to create a lot of noise and email traffic and or website traffic that doesn't solve any problem. Did I answer your
Indeed.
question?
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
I think so. So where are you still finding growth? Is it in new markets or
Well, so
maybe some
we're a startup. So we pivoted last May from a tech enabled wholesaler to this now again the decision layer for freight forwarders. And we actually strategically walked away from all that business we had before to make sure that we were 100% neutral and there was no conflict of interest there on our side. So the struggle is getting people to understand what that is, right? Because it gets collapsed into, hey, are you an AI company? Well, yeah, but or hey, are you a wholesaler? Well, no, but um, and so the education or the vocabulary that we use or language that we use has probably been the most difficult to be able to position ourselves in a manner that actually shows again the value. I keep going back to that because the cost of what we do is relatively inexpensive and there's a very low barrier of entry, but everybody's cost conscious, right? When they start saying, hey, you say it's $10, is it going to be $10 tomorrow? Is it going to be $10 a year from now? Like how much I invest in this long term? Because I think there's just the way tech has been, right? It's never been it's never what you thought it was, at least from the beginning, right? When you think you're going to build something or whatnot, it's $100,000. Well, I'm into it, 9.3 million already, right? So like, it's never what you think it is, and that's probably the hardest thing is to say, hey, we're full transparency. This is what we're charging. This is the value we create. There's no hidden costs, right? No hidden fees. In fact, I had a customer last week that signed up. A couple of weeks ago, we sent the contract, and he emailed me. He goes, Chris, I am just relieved that the contract actually is what you said it was going to be. And that's a sign, right? That like there's all these sneaky ways that like, oh, slipped it into the terms and condition. And I think that's part of the change of AI is going to help, right? I think AI is really good at finding patterns. AI is really good at recognizing nuances and where risk and responsibility should fall and when, right? So that's my answer.
interesting? Yeah. So yeah, I mean, it sounds like you've got a lot of opportunities for new markets, or at least capturing existing market, I guess.
A thousand
So
percent. Yeah, the market wise is it's really the world is our oyster from that aspect. There's between 100. We have about 35 customers today. Again, we just relaunched in January. I used to think there's 121 freight forwarders around the world. I've now been told there's over 300,000 around the world. And then you start talking about how many truckers are out there, how many, obviously airlines, how many ocean lines, all the kind of good things. And because we've kind of cracked the air freight side, we will be going into ocean and trucking at some point, but we don't see that as fragmented as the air freight.
hmm, yeah, yeah, I can see that. So, and I think that kind of swings in my next question too. Honestly, is what forces are shaping your decisions as CEO over the next 1 to 2 years?
Volume, customer feedback, right? So what is the market telling us on what's important to them? And the struggle from a CEO perspective is what is real and what is needed today versus what is needed 2 years from now, because the behaviors will change, right? Our industry in itself really hasn't changed since the beginning of freight forwarding, which goes back to way before World War II. Obviously, yeah, some documentation stuff has changed and regulatory things have changed, but the overall process has stayed very similar through the century. I see it changing dramatically on again what role each person plays or what company each company plays. And instead of being a strictly a supply chain, is where are you adding value, and then how do you add that cost to that? Good example is access to rates. Many times where the rules are or were, I can't see rates globally. I can only see what comes out of my country, right? So if I'm in in US, I can only see rates ex US. I can't see rates into the US. Well, the challenge with that is now it's not transparent on what I'm actually paying. So even if I have a partner that is honest, saying, hey, I got a net, I'm limited to what they know. I'm not limited to what a global scale is. To have conversations with my partner and says, hey, you're always booking on British Airways. I see that American Airlines, I have a better destination cost for American Airlines here in Dallas. So if the cost of the air freight is 5 cents more, I'm saving 20 cents on my handling fees, right? So you can have more open conversations at a global level because the air freight is what the asset player owns that value, right? There's not a lot of value that a freight forwarder gives by just saying, hey, I know American Airlines or British Airways. So
And so is that becoming more transparent now? Is that what you're
it's coming more
suggesting with
transparent. It's becoming more dynamic, for lack of a better way to say it. But people also have platform fatigue, right? Like how many different platforms are you going to go to get access to the data that you need? That's one of the beautiful things of Aircon is we connect all of those things we can connect to or do connect to. So when you're quoting to your customer, our agents going out to all these things. And by the way, we can also gate them to where we're not hitting the airline for the same shipment because the forwarder went to 3 other forwarders, right? For rates. So we can gate that. Hey, we've already went to the rate. And unless you have your own special agreement or you're on an account with the particular airline, we help gate the noise to the airline. Right. So there's value to the airline to not have false hope that, hey, I might get this shipment. And then long term, we see it to where we can actually commit at that time. And then, so there's not all these false bookings for the airline. Right. So we see it as a win-win for the entire industry, but our North Star is the forwarder. And the reason is the forwarder has to have a relationship with the buyer. Right. So part of this, the philosophy is that we're moving the decision closer to the people that are actually paying. Right. And there's nuance there that I could get into, but I think that the beauty of AI that allows us to do that is
for
because
sure?
we can do that faster and more accurately long term. Now, obviously, we got to start somewhere, and we're starting where we're at. But yeah, that's where I see the industry changing for the better and not removing the human. I think I think that misses the point of why we're doing all this stuff. We're doing it to make it more. I know what I'm buying, and I'm not just buying based on price. I'm buying based on service, which equals value, right? So
Yeah.
cost and service combined, that's the value creation.
So last question, and we'll go a little macro here. Well, I know you're a global company, so you can kind of tailor it how you like, but what do you think comes next for private company operators like yourself here in DFW?
I think we're in a great spot. Dallas, obviously being in Texas, there's lots of opportunities in terms of from a business perspective. I think it's going to change our tech mindset, right? So there's not a lot of, should say there's not a lot, but there's not a lot of money that flows through Dallas yet in terms of a VC standpoint. That's
I agree.
non-related to oil and gas, non-related to real estate, right? If you're related to those two things, there's lots of money out there. But if you're, but they're much more conservative in terms of risk, right? And so I think that's going to change over relatively, not I should say relatively quickly. That's probably not the right word. But how you evaluate deals, how you evaluate, what is a company worth, I think is going to change dramatically and not be so much what's in the spreadsheet. Because I think a lot of times private equity VCs, particularly here in Dallas, look at a spreadsheet and look at strictly at a formula, not necessarily, and I shouldn't even say it that way, but I think there's going to be an eye opening of, oh wow, we can do, again, what is the value created or what's the problem they're solving is more important than just the tech or more important than just the asset that they're buying. It's what value for humankind is it creating, and that has tremendous value. Again, so even going down to like farming community, right? I'm a farm boy from Wisconsin, right? So I always think of like how does this affect the farmers because most of my family most of my family are farmers. And I see the technology on how to all the way down, I think is going to help make better decisions of when you're going to grow this, when you're going to ship this. And I see the different systems working together, not flawlessly, but much more aligned, right? So the incentive for a trucker in our industry is, a trucker wants to just go from A to B with as full as he can at a fair market rate, right? And there'll be more collaboration of, hey, can you move this today? No. Okay, trucker B, can you move this today? No, trucker three. So things will just become more fluid between the parties. Again, that's why I think it's important that you know your value, right? What are you bringing to the supply chain or the value chain to make sure that you're a part of it in the future? Because if you're not bringing value, AI will absolutely automate that out.
Yep, 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 yep. I agree wholeheartedly. Chris, I thank you for your time, your insights, and sharing your experience. It's a fascinating industry that you're in. For those of you watching, I hope you find this as fascinating as I do. And you can find more episodes of the Operator Signal on YouTube or follow me on LinkedIn. Chris Condon. Thank you, sir.
Okay. Thanks, James. I appreciate you.